In a glass-walled boardroom high above Atlanta, Elara Vance extended her hand, ready to close the biggest deal of her life, the $2.4 billion deal that would define her career. The summit room, on the 47th floor of the Meridian Plaza, was a sterile cathedral of corporate power. The polished mahogany table was so vast it reflected the faces of the board members like a dark, still lake. In its surface, Elara saw the faintest, almost invisible crack in the veneer. It was a bright Tuesday morning in October. This meeting was meant to be a formality, a celebratory signing of the $2.4 billion merger. The air was thick with the low murmur of anticipation, the clink of a water glass, the rustle of papers. A small, discreet camera in the corner, its red light glowing steadily under the label Investor Stream, broadcasted everything. Elara Vance, CEO of Vance Equity Partners, was the picture of calm in her sharp navy suit. Her goal was simple: finalize the merger. Across the table sat Margaret Blackwell, the chairwoman of Blackwell Industries. In her late 60s, Margaret's pearls and tweed suit spoke of old money and an authority she wielded like a weapon. Her goal, Elara was beginning to suspect, was to assert dominance. The other board members, mostly older white men, looked on, nervously deferential to Margaret. Elara smiled professionally, extending her hand across the polished wood. "Margaret," she said, her voice clear and steady. "It's been a long road. I'm glad we're finally here." Margaret Blackwell looked at Elara's outstretched hand. Then she looked at Elara's face. A small, cold smirk curled the corner of her mouth. She lifted her own hand, not to shake, but in a short, dismissive wave. "We don't shake hands with people like you," she said. The voice cut through the silence. The room froze. The CFO, Mr. Harrison, coughed into his fist. Another director looked down, suddenly fascinated by his own notes. The camera in the corner continued its silent recording. Elara held her hand steady for a single, painful beat. Her expression was unreadable. She didn't flush, she didn't stammer. She simply lowered her hand, slowly, pulling it back to rest on her leather portfolio. Elara meets Margaret's smug gaze and says, "Understood. Shall we proceed with the presentation then?" The tension in that boardroom is a chilling reminder of what dignity looks like under pressure. If you are still watching this video and find the details of Elara's strength valuable, please comment with the number 8 below to let us know you are here. And if you are not yet subscribed to Black Brilliance, I would advise you to subscribe and turn on the bell. You won't want to miss a single moment of how this unfolds. Your support helps us continue to create powerful content, just like this, to illuminate and inspire. Now, let's continue. The presentation began, but the politeness of the graphs and charts couldn't hide the brutality of what had just happened. Elara stood at the podium, her voice even as she navigated the financial models projected on the large screen. Her hand rested on the leather-bound notebook beside her laptop, the same hand Margaret had refused to touch. Unseen by the room, she made a small, precise checkmark next to a pre-written clause in her notes. Her goal was no longer just to present. It was to document. Margaret, sitting back with her arms crossed, looked openly bored. She occasionally leaned over to whisper to the director next to her, who chuckled softly, covering his mouth. Elara clicked to the next slide, detailing the integration strategy. The data was solid, showing the $2.4 billion valuation was more than fair. "As you can see," Elara said, "the Q4 projections are robust." "Miss Vance," Margaret interrupted, her voice dripping with skepticism. "Are you sure you understand the complexities of our legacy market? It's not as simple as your little numbers suggest." Elara paused, keeping her eyes on Margaret. "The data is sourced from your own internal audits, Margaret. As I was saying." She moved to the next point, but the attacks continued. When she discussed projected profits, Margaret scoffed audibly. "That's ambitious." Mr. Harrison, the CFO, seized the opening. "Aspirational, perhaps," he said, winking at Margaret. She rewarded him with a thin smile. Elara didn't argue or defend. She simply clicked to the next slide. "The data is on page 47 of your binders, Mr. Harrison." As I was saying, she noted the smirk, the interruption, the shared disdain. Margaret leaned forward, her pearls clicking softly against the table. You'll learn, Miss Vance, that this industry doesn't reward emotional ambition. It rewards experience. Elara nods slightly. Thank you for the insight, Margaret. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to take a brief recess before the final signing. Just a 5-minute break. The hallway felt like a different world, quiet and anonymous, a stark contrast to the boardroom's pressure cooker. The carpet muffled Elara's footsteps as she walked 20 paces down the hall, stopping at a spot with no foot traffic, just out of sight of the boardroom door. Margaret's words, "We don't shake hands with people like you," echoed in her mind, not as an insult, but as a confirmation. Her professional mask slipped just a fraction. Her expression turned cold, focused, and absolutely determined. She pulled out her personal cell phone, not her work-issued device, and dialed a single number from memory. It was the direct line to her chief legal counsel. The call connected instantly. Elara's voice was low, measured, and firm. Execute Clause 8.3. Effective immediately. She listened, her eyes fixed on the Atlanta skyline through a nearby window. Yes, she said, anticipating the question. The documentation is public record. The live stream is active. Thank you. She ended the call without another word. It was a surgical strike. She straightened her navy suit jacket, took one deep, centering breath, and her calm, professional mask settled back into place. She walked back toward the boardroom. As she reached the door, she paused, checking her watch. 11:17 a.m. She burned the exact time into her memory. Margaret's voice drifts from the room. Well, I hope she's not lost. We have a signing to get to. Elara pushes the door open. The call has been made. The fuse is lit. Elara is walking back into that room, and everything is about to change. If you are still watching this video, feeling the tension build, and find this level of strategic power valuable, please comment with the number 8 below to let me know you are right here with us. And if you haven't subscribed to Black Brilliance yet, I strongly advise you to subscribe and turn on the bell. You are not going to want to miss the consequences of Clause 8.3. Your support helps us continue to create this powerful content to inform and inspire you. Now, let's continue. Elara Vance returned to her seat as if she'd only stepped out for a sip of water, but she had just set a time bomb. Margaret was still smiling about her emotional ambition comment, shuffling papers smugly to prepare for the signing. Right, Margaret said, her voice full of false authority. Where were we? The final signatures, I believe. The small red light on the investor stream camera in the corner suddenly felt intensely bright. Before Margaret could continue, a phone buzzed on the table. Then another. Then Mr. Harrison's tablet, which he was using to review the signing documents, flashed a bright, violent red notification. Margaret, Harrison said, his voice cracking. He tapped his screen, his knuckles white. He scrolled frantically. Margaret, the funds. What about the funds? Margaret snapped, annoyed by the interruption. They're gone. Harrison half shouted, standing up so fast his chair screeched against the floor. The $2.4 billion. It's been withdrawn. All of it. Effective immediately. The room erupted. Directors were talking over one another, fumbling for their own phones. Margaret's face shattered, arrogance collapsing instantly into disbelief. Her eyes, wide with panic, fixed on Elara. You, she whispered, her voice strangled. You did this. You can't. Elara meets her gaze, her voice perfectly calm but echoing in the chaos. I can. And I did. It's called Clause 8.3. Silence fell again, but this time it wasn't awkwardness. It was the sound of a $2.4 billion empire evaporating. We don't shake hands with people like you, Margaret had said. Now, her own hands were shaking uncontrollably, fumbling for her water glass. Elara stood up slowly, calmly gathering her leather portfolio and her laptop. She was fully in command. The large screen on the wall, previously showing her presentation, now displayed a live feed of the stock market ticker. Margaret's face had gone from red to a sickly, mottled white. She looked at the board members for support, but they were all staring in horror at their screens or at the ticker. The CFO, Mr. Harrison, was already on the phone, his voice a panicked whisper, "Get legal in here now." Clause 8.3, Elara stated, her voice cutting through the panic. It was signed by your own legal team 2 months ago. It allows for immediate withdrawal of all capital if any act of gross misconduct or discrimination is documented during negotiations. Margaret sputtered. Documentation? There's no. Elara simply gestured politely to the small red light in the corner. The investor livestream. It's been active since 9 a.m. You've provided all the documentation I need. As if on cue, the stock ticker on the wall flashed bright red with Blackwell Industries symbol, followed by a steep, catastrophic downward arrow. It was plummeting in real time. We can fix this, Margaret said, her voice desperate, taking a step toward Elara. We can renegotiate. A bonus, a public apology. Elara paused at the door, her hand on the handle. This isn't a negotiation, Margaret. This is a consequence. One of the board members, who had been silent the entire time, looked up at Margaret, his face grim. No, ma'am. You did this. Elara Vance walked out of the Meridian Plaza, leaving behind the glass room and the shattered reflections of the people inside. The $2.4 billion vanished overnight, just as Elara's respect had vanished in an instant that morning. She didn't look back. As she exited the main lobby elevator, her town car was already waiting at the curb. She slid into the back seat, the door closing with a soft, final thud. She checked her phone not with panic, but with quiet efficiency, deleting the one notification that confirmed her transfer was complete. To the airport, she said to the driver. Before she had left the boardroom, as Margaret stood frozen in disbelief, Elara had paused beside her. She had leaned in just slightly, her voice so low it was only for Margaret to hear. You thought power meant control, she said. It doesn't. Power means choice. And I just made mine. By 5 p.m., the financial news networks were scrambling, calling it the handshake collapse. The clip of Margaret's dismissal, captured by the investor stream, was everywhere. Blackwell Industries' valuation had collapsed by 38% before the closing bell. By the next morning, following an emergency board meeting, Margaret Blackwell had been forced to resign. Elara's firm, Vance Equity Partners, issued only one short, public statement. Partnerships end when respect does. The financial press dissected the event for days, analyzing the legal loophole, the market shock. But the real story, the one replayed in boardrooms and whispered in offices, was that single moment. The outstretched hand, the cold refusal, and the catastrophic price of arrogance. Because sometimes power doesn't roar, it simply stops shaking hands. Elara's story shows that true power doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it simply stops shaking hands. When we allow prejudice to guide our judgment, we risk losing the $2.4 billion opportunity sitting right across the table. If this story of justice resonated with you, share your thoughts on Elara's powerful choice in the comments below. And to continue celebrating these moments of unstoppable dignity, join the Black Brilliance community by subscribing today. A Black CEO is publicly humiliated when a racist chairwoman refuses her handshake during a $2.4 billion merger meeting. What the chairwoman didn't know. That CEO controlled every dollar on the table. Welcome to Black Brilliance. This is the story of Elara Vance, a brilliant CEO who faces overt discrimination in the highest echelons of the corporate world. When Chairwoman Margaret Blackwell says, "We don't shake hands with people like you," she kicks off a chain of events she could never have predicted. Follow the tense boardroom drama as Margaret continues her mockery, unaware that Elara isn't just sitting there absorbing the insults, she's calculating. As the investor livestream camera records every moment, Elara unleashes Clause 8.3, a contractual time bomb that proves respect is cheaper than recovery. This story is a powerful reminder that judging by appearances is a fool's game. True power doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it simply stops shaking hands. What did you think of Elara's strategic move? Let us know in the comments below.